Can I thank everybody? We're about to start, and before I start the meeting, can we have a quick introductions? And before we do that, can I remind everybody not to touch the speakers because that will interrupt. To make sure that everybody is heard properly. We don't want people to shout, but at the same time, make sure that everybody can hear each one of us. Thank you. We're going to start the meeting. And the first item on the agenda is notice of recording and webcast. And can I remind all members that this meeting will be webcast for live or subsequent broadcast via the council's meeting YouTube site, and that members of the press and public may record and take photographs except where there are confidential or exempt items. The next item on the agenda is apologies, and I believe everybody is here who is supposed to be here.
Yeah.
Thanks, everyone. And next agenda item is declaration of interest. Members are reminded that they must declare all relevant pecuniary and non-pecuniary interests arising from any business to be discussed at this meeting. If a disclosable pecuniary interest is declared, a member must not speak or take part in that agenda item. Any declaration of interest will be recorded in the minutes of the meeting. Anyone to declare any interest? No. Thank you. And the next agenda item is action notes and action tracker. To agree the action notes of the meeting that was held on 14th of July 2020 and note the action tracker. Councillor Harmer.
Yeah, a long-standing action, which is to be given an updated list of HMOs. I think my list I have currently is from October 2020, and we were told we would get regular updates, and that hasn't happened. So could that be chased up, please?
Okay, noted. And Councillor Miles-Bryden?
Yes, we had a discussion at some stage in July about the way that missed bin collections are recorded, and we had an assurance, I think, that the performance indicator information would be made much more accurate to reflect the actual picture of bins that are missed. Also, we had a discussion about wanting national performance information so that we could compare Birmingham's performance with the national picture. So I just wanted some assurance that we would get that information as part of our November performance monitoring report.
Can I ask cabinet member and officers to respond to that?
Yes, that will be provided in the November scrutiny meeting. We've got work already commenced with the business support team. They've developed a new report that pulls together the complaints and missed collections on a single report, and that's a report that we will bring to scrutiny committee in November. And on top of that, I've also done, I'm going to extend a trial with the opposition leads in recording missed collections. So what we get from the depots, I get that since the meeting last time in July, I've been receiving a daily report of all the missed collections, every single road that's missed. I get that data from the officers, and then I'm going to track that data with elected members. There's already a pilot with some elected members, but I'm going to extend it to a few more across the different depots to see if it actually reflects what's happening at the depots. In addition, we've had Neil Griffiths, his name, isn't he? New project officer, director of projects, and his job is also to modernise the service in the depots and the slab in the cabs, and that will also give us more data, which will be accurately reflect live data that's happening. And I think within probably towards Christmas or just after Christmas, we want to get to a point where every single elected member is informed on the day of collection what roads have been missed in their wards. Once that you're aware of the roads that have been missed, and two, that if they haven't been reported, because unless we only get the reports from the residents, and if the crews haven't reported them or they've been missed off because of admin in the depots, then at least the elected members can make me and the officers aware of those reports, then we can deliver where we want to get to is a zero dropped collection rate across the city, with the caveat there's always access issues, etc., that happens across the city. So, but we are getting there. We're in a much better position than we have been in previous years. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Kenwood.
Yeah, sorry, Chair. Yeah, we still need to programme in the agreed deep dive into the voids that was agreed on 12 months ago. That this committee would have a deep dive report into why our voids are so much delayed, or in some instances why they happened in the first place, as far as the high cost is concerned. So it was agreed we would do a deep dive into that, so that still needs to be programmed.
Yeah. Okay, we'll work on that. Anybody else? No? Thank you. Can we agree the action notes for the meeting held on 14th of July? Yeah? Is that yes? Yes. Okay, thanks very much. Can we move on to the agenda item 5, which is a petition to ban use of pesticides, and debate the petition relating to the banning of use of pesticides presented to the City Council on 12th of July 2022. And we've got attendees here for the petition are Laura Hackett, who is the lead petitioner, accompanied by Emma Pavans D. Sikati. I apologize if I pronounce it wrongly, and Nick Moore from Pesticide Action Network. And we got Elizabeth Clare, co-founder of the petition. She's attending online. Thank you. And we got Councillor Izzy Knowles, who presented the petition to the council. She's here. And we got Councillor Majid Mahmood, Cabinet Member for Environment. And we got Darren Sher, Assistant Director for Street Scene.
Just to make you aware, I did also present the petition, the online.
Yeah, sorry, you know.
You did. Make the petition. I don't think we've been in a situation where the petition was the one responding to the petition.
Yeah. So can I ask one of the petitioners to put their case? Or is it?
Yeah, sorry, I was just unmuting. Would you like me to start? Yeah.
Yes, if you can, yeah.
Yeah, so 12,000 years ago, the dawn of agriculture gave rise to humans needing to control the growth of unwanted plant growth. But only 200 years ago, humans introduced more chemical means of controlling unwanted plants, with chemical treatments really taking off after the Second World War. Since then, we've increasingly lost our traditional, more environmentally friendly methods and switched to using herbicides, which in many cases have ceased to be used due to their toxicity to both the environment and wildlife, but also to humans. We still find ourselves living in a chemical age where we look to use herbicides, a fairly recent phenomena in human history and still debatable with their use, before picking up more tried and tested traditional means of controlling plant growth that align more with nature. Alongside this increase in chemical usage, we have seen a devastating decline in wildlife on this planet. In this country, we have seen a decline in up to 60% of flying insects in the last 20 years. Incredibly worryingly, one study has recently predicted we could completely lose up to 41% of insect species in the next few years if we continue to treat our planet as we do. Removal of habitat and food sources are a huge reason behind this, as is climate change. But pollutants and our modern way of living also apply huge pressure on wildlife and has contributed to this mass extinction we are seeing around us. Soon we'll be left with crashing ecosystems and gaping holes in food systems. And this will really impact us. We'll lose pollinators we rely on for our food, and we'll lose animals higher up in food chains if we don't protect those further down. And our wildlife landscapes will irreversibly change. Because of this, our campaign has mainly focused on the effect of herbicides, particularly one called glyphosate, which is widely used on invertebrates such as bees. A recent study has confirmed that bumblebees can inadvertently be exposed to glyphosate by foraging on recently treated plants. This is then thought to affect their ability to generate the next brood of larvae if the colony is already under stress. It's also been shown to alter production of amino acids, reduce their immunity, affect their sleep, their navigation, potentially place them under oxidative stress, alter royal jelly, protein makeup, lots of things. Even alterations in bee gut microbiota have been recorded. At a time when these creatures are being placed under such stress with regards to habitat and food source anyway, it does seem ludicrous and selfish that we then pile more pressure on them by exposing them inadvertently to substances which further hamper their well-being when viable alternatives do exist. There are other concerns too. Glyphosate is said to be used safe around water, however, its metabolites can persist in water, and there are concerns about its presence in aquatic environments, including toxicity to fish. If used in an urban environment where there is no soil for it to absorb to, it has the potential to run off into water. We were sent a list of other herbicides used by the council last year, and one of those has also been implicated in abnormal fish development too. So it's not only glyphosate that is of concern. Furthermore, I've worked in biomedical science for many years, and last week took a quick look at the recent literature regarding glyphosate and its effect on human health. Publications just this year in 2022 have reported changes in the way cells act when exposed to glyphosate. Alterations in the way that cells read their DNA suggest that can also be passed on to next generation. Links to the development of lymphoma and breast cancer, links to increasing thyroid abnormalities observed worldwide, increases in things like wheezing in agricultural workers, and the potential ability to cross the blood-brain barrier, and a link to neurodegenerative diseases, including Alzheimer's and possibly autism. Additionally, glyphosate and another herbicide used by the council have been associated with birth defects. The list does go on. Our concerns are based in an accumulating body of peer-reviewed science. We are not alone in our concern. Other councils and countries worldwide have already been bold, and they've banned or limited the use of several pesticides, including glyphosate. I'll hand over to Laura at this point.
Thank you, Beth. Okay, thank you, everyone. So we're here today, Beth and I, in equal parts, empowered and humbled, and in gratitude to the 12,000 residents of Birmingham who signed our petition calling on this council to ban pesticides in the city. And we stand in gratitude and in service to 16,000 residents of the West Midlands and over 97,000 residents of the global community who signed our petition calling on this council to ban pesticides in the city. And this petition clearly shows that we have the support of the people of Birmingham. Since starting our Be Friendly Brum campaign, we have been on the radio, spoken to radio, local news and the BBC. And we've been contacted by allotment holders, community growing groups, concerned parents, dog walkers and park users, and more, asking why, despite mounting evidence to their harm on humans, animals and the natural world, the council continue to spray pesticides. We have been sent photographs of the now ubiquitous, ugly brown rings around trees and children's play areas where the ground has been sprayed, killing all the plant life below. We recognise and welcome the positive steps that the council have taken in working towards making Birmingham a cleaner and greener city, to pelargonic acid to replace glyphosate on many of our city's pavements, and the reduction in grass cutting from 14 to 10 cuts a year. However, in the face of an ecological emergency, these changes need to be more bold and happen more quickly. We now welcome the council's response to our calls for a full phase-out plan of all pesticides to help protect and restore our dwindling biodiversity. The council should be praised for its ongoing City of Nature work and its ambitions to align their operations with the Birmingham and Black Country Wildlife Trust strategy, working for nature's recovery. And let us remember that the Wildlife Trust's own report said if all towns and cities made a commitment to go pesticide-free and create more space for nature, and if we took action to create more homes for insects, our urban areas could soon not just become places for people, but places places where people and nature live happily and healthily alongside one another. Imagine cities free from pesticides where green leaves and flowers are visible in all directions and where the air is clean, residents can grow food and children can grow up surrounded by the familiar buzzing of bumblebees, and where they could learn the names of birds and wildflowers. This is a future that I want for Birmingham. I love this city. I was born here and I now raise my children here, and I feel duty to try and make it a better place to live and to be a good ancestor. The council has been spraying weed spray in one type or another since the 1970s. That's my whole lifetime. And I have no doubt that at the time it seemed like the right thing to do, to reduce weeds and to keep the streets neat and tidy. But this time has passed. And Beth spoke about the decline in insect populations, and I'm sure that all of you have noticed this for yourselves. The abundance of bees and butterflies and dragonflies and ladybirds and grasshoppers and the other beautiful creatures that would delight and inspire us as children are gone. We welcome the opportunity to increase habitat for wildlife by reducing mowing grass, local areas untouched for nature. And this will also assist in our response to the climate crisis. If grass is kept just a little longer, it can keep the ground cooler during hot spells. Surely approaches like this are a no-brainer when we need to move towards addressing and dealing with the climate crisis. We have a moment here. We talk about a biophilic city, a city of nature, the green revolution. And please, let's bring these ambitions to life through our actions today and listen to the voices of the citizens of Birmingham and be a truly bold Birmingham and commit to a full pesticide phase out now. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Councillor Izzy Knowles.
Yeah, I can. Thank you for both of those presentations. I'd just like to take this opportunity to say a couple of things. You have an obligation for net biodiversity gain as part of the regulation. You have the City of Nature objective. Going pesticide free doesn't mean the streets will be any less well maintained necessarily. It does mean that part of the strategy will be to encourage biodiversity in nature. Experiences from Europe, the entirety of France, their cities and towns are managed without the use of herbicides and happening for many years. Similarly, in Luxembourg, the Netherlands, Denmark, Italy, they all manage perfectly well without the use of herbicides. So there are plenty of examples out there. I'd also like to take this opportunity to offer the assistance of PAN UK. We've been working on this for me personally 15 years, and to offer our advice and expertise going forward freely to the council to help develop policies or overcome obstacles, etc. As things develop.
Izzy Knowles.
Thank you, Chair. I was very proud of my city when in 2019 there was a cross-party motion which led Birmingham City Council to declare a climate emergency. It felt we were listening to the thousands of young people who were marching in protest across the country to demand action to safeguard their future. It felt right that the largest council in Europe, with one of the youngest populations, should actively lead the way in restoring our ecosystems to protect our planet. A climate, one of the high buildings in Birmingham, brings it home how many parks and green spaces we have here in our city. I'm privileged to represent Moseley, which is full of them. And yet when I see council workers dressed like Ghostbusters, spraying the pavements underneath the hanging baskets in our centre, I can't help but think that killing all the insects that pollinate these flowers is counterproductive and not a good look for a city that's committed to play a leading role to tackle the causes and impacts of the climate emergency. The very committed group here who are here today, the 12,000 Birmingham citizens and the close to 100,000 people who have signed this petition agree with me. This is our chance to really step up and show that this council is not one that just plays lip service to our citizens. Listening is not enough. We also need to act.
Yes. We've got an option. We can ask questions, you can, as members, to the petitioners, or we can ask the cabinet member and the officer to respond, and then we can ask questions. It's up to you how you want.
response from Cabinet, I think.
Yeah, okay. I think that'll be good, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Councillor Majid Mahmood?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Can I just take this opportunity to thank Birmingham, especially Lauren and Beth, and the 12,000 plus citizens of the city, together with the 88,000 plus petitioners from across the region and country, with many of them have an interest in the city by either working here or having family and friends in the city. This is, Chair, one of the largest petitions that we've had presented to the City Council, and it needs action. And as a City Council, we do need to respond to it. I would like to thank Pan UK for their advice and guidance throughout the last few weeks since the presentation of the petition. It's been vital that we speak to Pan UK, have vast experience in adopting to reduce the of glyphosate. Chair, we also have had a number of email exchanges with Birmingham and Pan UK, and I've had meetings on the back of this petition in order to sift through the ask that you have of your petitioners. And, Chair, just to reassure everyone here, we are in a listening mode, and we have produced a report to the committee with the actions that we are taking, and that report you all have is titled Nature Recovery Strategy. And if you haven't read it, I strongly suggest you do read it. But our final response will be taken after this meeting, because we want to take on board the views of all committee members and Birmingham Pan UK as well, and the stakeholders for us to guide ourselves forward. We have taken steer from the Association of Public Excellence, who have recently provided a report to members on the use of glyphosate. The key points highlighted is that there's no right or wrong answer to the question, is it safe to use glyphosate products? There are only a few alternatives to glyphosate, which are seen as alternatives and are often still in a pilot phase and are much more expensive to use. The public themselves, if we were to reduce the use of glyphosate, they would have to accept higher levels of weeds across the city, and ending the use of pesticides and hard surfaces will likely mean there will be more visible weeds again for longer periods of time. However, weeds do contribute to biodiversity, has been explained by the petitioner, so they do provide a really good habitat and source of food for bees and other insects. And of particular note, APSIS says it may be prudent for all local authorities to consider the scale of glyphosate use, the likely risks of rising, the potential to limit the reliance on glyphosate-based products, and the ability to find a suitable alternative product to prepare for the future. And as a council, we acknowledge we need to reduce or even eliminate the use of glyphosate and uncertainty around its long-term use. It is sensible that the council should work towards reducing chemical use by testing and adopting alternative maintenance, and some of the actions are highlighted in the report. And this is a approach that we are seeking to adopt, but we want this to be a joint approach with stakeholders, not just the City Council, so we'll be working Pan UK, the petitioners and all other stakeholders. The actions that we've highlighted, one is to reduce chemical usage by the City Council, but we will need to review current sites where chemicals are used, identify the best way forward to control weeds and trial different approaches. Second action is to increase areas managed in a pollinator-friendly way. Again, we will need to review all sites, and we are also going to trial a No More May in 3 wards next year in 2023. We've had approaches from Councillor Sharon Thompson and Councillor Marcus Bernasconi from North Edgbaston, Councillor Kerry Jenkins from Moseley Board, and Councillor Izzy Knowles is nodding, she's full in agreement. And I've also spoken to my board colleague, I think it's, I need to show leadership here, and then Bromford and Haji will be the third trial that we would have in the city of No More May, and we'll see how that pans out next year and see if we can extend that to other wards. And if there are any other elected members, I'm sure we could extend to those wards as well if anybody wants to go forward. Only because I saw Councillor Rainbow nodding, so perhaps we could include Quintin as well. We're also going to ensure that our annual flower display is going to use pollinator-friendly plants from now on, and going to be reviewed annually, something that Pan UK asked us to do. We're going to look to increase the perennial plant programme. Again, this will be part of the reviews. We've already got a plan to increase the tree canopy in each ward, and the plan is being developed and it's been monitored by an officer in the council, Simon Needle. And we are looking, especially around in the city areas who have a very low tree canopies, a lot of work that needs to be doing there. We're going to increase the amount of wildflower in the city, and this is something I've got parks within my portfolios that I'm insisting, and in new green spaces that we do have a section That's for wildflowers. And again, this is going to be part of the review that we'll be looking to. We're going to introduce pollinated pots in urban areas, and this hopefully will start commencing next year. And we're going to work with partners to promote pollinator-friendly management of open spaces. And this has started, and we've shared a draft with some of our external organisations. We're going to carry out baseline and then regular eco surveys. And clearly, as a council, we're going to review the strategy and actions annually, working with Pan UK and if Bee Friendly from what to help us continue on this journey. Then we'll be more than happy to continue working with them. So the next stage for us, Chair, is to refine the document, following the comments today from members of the committee, take further soundings from colleagues across different councils, because other councils are ahead of us in this journey. So we will be discussing with them the lessons that they've learned, review our work programmes and assets across the city, and then start the change programme. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Cabinet Member. Darren, do you want to add anything?
Well, that was quite a comprehensive review of the actions. Just to say that we are 100% committed to moving this forward. It is the right thing to do. We do need to remove chemicals from our base use and not see that as there are alternatives which will have a much better benefit to the environment. So we are on board and want to make a commitment that we will do that. And the document that we have put forward as a draft at the moment, we will be refining and adding in more detail as we develop that with our partners. I know there's been questions about schools and other areas within the city. So we are talking with education, and we'll be able to add that into the document. So this is very much, it was a work in progress, just an initial response to get us to this point, to listen to what all the views are, and now we can add in some more tougher actions on our behalf, and also more stronger commitments from us as a service to changing the way the city is managed in the future.
Thanks, Darren. Now, Councillor Rajahama.
Thank you, and thank you so much to the petitioners and everyone who organised and signed the petition to bring this matter to our attention. I think perhaps the nub of it was the question floated, are we willing to accept more weeds and what some people might consider a more tatty looking street, though I would disagree with them. And from my point of view, absolutely yes. If that's the price of accepting we don't use chemicals like glyphosate at all in the future, it's one that I think it is absolutely right. We need to protect bees, and indeed all pollinators. There are some that are a bit less sexy than bees, but they're all just as important in our future. And if there's a few plants around the place that traditionally human beings have not seen as the right plants, well, we need to learn to live alongside nature, not trying to get nature to conform to our view of what looks right. I've got an apple tree that I planted a few years ago in my back garden, and you accept that you're going to lose a few to bugs. You don't spray, well, some people maybe do, but I don't spray it. I've never sprayed it in its life. And you lose a few, but that's how things should be. That is nature, that is life. And I think that's the attitude we need to have in the city. And it may mean that, as members, we get, a few negative comments about the state of the pavements, but for me, I'm certainly willing to take that and go back patiently and explain why it's being done and why it's important for the health of the city.
Thanks, Ryder.
Yes, I'm very supportive, obviously, like we all are, of saving the planet and doing what we can in Birmingham to move that forward. But I would dig my heels in and remind us all that we are committed in this city to a cleaner and greener city. And I think that residents want to see their streets clean. So I would say that we absolutely have to stick to that. And I would want some reassurance that we are going to, have a weed-free pavement scape, because it's important. People want to live in a decent, nice looking area. And obviously, you know, I think that's what we have to stick to. I think we have to find a way of doing it. I'm very supportive of not using this stuff, but I want a reassurance on how we're going to stick to that priority of a cleaner streets based on, you know, what we've been discussing here. And I would dig my heels in that we absolutely have to stick to that commitment. And there's got to be a way, surely, of making sure that we have a weed-free pavement street environment.
I want to add on to what Councillor Bradley has said, you know, cleaner, greener streets and parks does promote biodiversity of the species which are dying down. So that's really important. Yes, sir.
Yeah, I'd just like to say, it doesn't have to be either or. It can be both, and there are plenty of examples of that. It's dependent on having a well thought out plan and strategy, and also to perhaps answer your question as well, having a good communication strategy with the public as well, and getting them on side is all part and parcel of it, but it doesn't have to be either or. You can have adequately perfectly well maintained streets and increase biodiversity at the same time without using herbicides. That's the experience that we've seen from many hundreds of towns and cities across the world, including some in the UK.
Lauren Rainbow.
Comment on that, no, I'm very supportive of this as well, but so my question to Councillor Mooney and to Karen is, as councillors, can we get sort of almost a little critiques when we do get questions from our residents, we've got something to respond to, and quickly explain it so they can understand.
Aaron and then cabinet member.
Yeah, I was just, it's interesting because the view of the street is really important, and having the right plants in the right locations is important. This year, the highways have been managed slightly differently with the run up to the Commonwealth Games. So we haven't used glyphosate on the street, on the pavement. We've had increased sweeping. We've had deep cleansing in some locations, mechanical scraping of weeds in other areas. And we have our highways contractor have used pelargonic acid instead of glyphosate. So, and I think the streets have been cleaner this year than they have been previously. The issue where we have used glyphosate is around tree bases, as you've already identified those brown rings around the bases of trees. And that's done to ease mowing, so we don't cause damage to the trees. So the only disadvantage of not spraying that ring out is that you'll get taller grass around the base of the tree where we won't cut. We won't cut it because we don't want to damage the trees. So that will be the different look of the city. This is about moving our chemical use into other methods, sweeping, various different uses of different types of product to control the weeds and keep them in areas, but also recognising where we have a central reservation, for example, a row of dandelions all the way through. Is that a major problem? Dandelions are a brilliant source for pollinators, and as Councillor Harmer says, that there are hoverflies and other insects out there that need our help as much as the bumblebee. So I think you can have both. It's that balance, and I think we can easily provide some crib notes to explain the change in the regime and the look of the city.
Thanks, Darren. Cabinet member.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Darren refers to highway, so we'll answer that. In terms of the sites that we're going to review, our aspiration is to go chemical free, but there's a perception out there that all schools also belong to the council when they don't. A lot of them are academies and free independent schools, but we will be sharing good practice with them. Thank you to Roger Harmer for supporting what we're trying to achieve. And I think I sensed he was volunteering Peacock's Green for no more.
Yeah.
That's all so far that we will be trying it, and with you, Darren said, streets have been cleaned this year. It's up to us as a council to ensure that continues, so that we can allocate appropriate funding and our infrastructure there to retain that funding so that we can keep cleaner streets across the city. But the key point is what Councillor Amos said, as long as that communication is key to residents, community groups, friends and parties, and elected members. So you also have the information available at hand to let people know why we're doing this, why we're trying to achieve this, and what the goal is for this. I think it would work. Communication is key, and I'm fully on board with that. And we will, after this meeting, we're going to sit down again, refine the strategy, and we'll share that initially with the committee here anyway. So when I'm back in November, you'll have that, and then that will be the start. All the publicity we should get, and more enterprises. That would work as well in terms of educating people. I think more people know about why we're doing something, and then they don't really mind the odd week. Reason why we're doing it.
Thanks, Cabinet Member. Ken and then Rajahama.
Thanks, Chair. I'd like to commend everybody who signed the petition. I don't think there's anybody around this table or anybody listening that would be against the principle of protecting the pollinators and encouraging them. I think it's a great idea, and certainly we're all for it. However, I would sort of reinforce Councillor Bridle's concerns, where we just don't want it to become an excuse not to do stuff to keep the place clean and green, because we've seen it before. And we've tried the mechanical sweeping up and clearing the weeds between the paths, and the reason we were given for stopping that was that it damaged the paths. So we've either got paths that won't take the machines, or we stop using machines. It would be nice. We need to make sure that we can actually achieve both, and keep the weeds that might cause trip hazards and slip hazards on paths, and get rid of them. But by introducing mechanical means, we've got to make sure that the paths are capable of taking them, which unfortunately a lot of them cannot do. So there's going to have to be a commitment from the Cabinet member and the city to make sure that whatever measures we take, we can keep up, and there's not going to be any excuses down the line for not doing it.
Rajahama.
Just quickly to come back on the rings around trees. I really don't think there'll be any problem. Yes, it has to be explained to people, but with the grass growing longer. In fact, the biggest complaints I've had about trees is where people have planted bulbs and things around the tree outside there, and then found that it's been killed off by glyphosate. So if we could actually leave people to look after that little patch to themselves, or let nature take its course, all for the better.
Raja, anybody else? Yes.
I just want to reiterate that we really understand the sort of juxtaposition of, yes, very much streets need to be accessible. There's questions of trip hazards, of course, questions of wheelchair users and buggy users. Absolutely, that's a factor that we take very seriously and that we consider. I think it's really thinking of our streets and our cities as dynamic spaces, where some spaces, as you justly point out, need to be very much clear, and some places you can save money, save efforts, and hopefully, very much educate the public in a proactive way, so that you don't only have to rely on, then responding to complaints, really anticipate the public and make that change, clear. But yeah, just to reiterate that this isn't an idea of let's just create these sort of overgrown cities. It's very much biodiversity needs to find a place, and I think we all find that to be true, and to find that place together in a clear way.
So, something Darren probably failed, but brushing technology has come on probably since the last time. There used to be a lot of complaints when you use the heavy wire bristles, etc., on infrastructure. Things have moved on somewhat since then, and they're a lot more pavement friendly than they used to be.
Maybe you should send Darren the specification sheet for the machine.
I think you've already been brushing.
We have moved away from the metal heads on the to more plastic. So we have they are more beneficial to the pavements, tarmac in particular.
Thanks, Darren. Nobody else? Thanks, everybody. I think we have listened to the concerns raised by the petitioners, and we had response from the cabinet member and officers, and we had a response from the members. And what we're going to do is listen to all those concerns and what measures are already taking place, and what else can be done to make sure that the biodiversity of our wild species is kept, and how it can be helped to promote its spread. We'll respond to the petitioners with the way forward. Is that okay for everybody? All right, thanks very much. I think the next.
Sorry, Chair. Can I, Christian Skye, Head of Scrutiny and Committee Services. I think what I'm hearing, and forgive me if I've misread this, is there seems to be support in terms of what's being put forward in the draft documentation. It sounds like the committee has still got some concerns about some areas that need to be addressed, and it sounds like there's a commitment that those will be. So I just wonder if there's something there about the draft that's being prepared, coming back to this committee, when those.
Yeah, I already said that, Christian, tonight.
Yeah, is that what we're saying?
Bring it back, hopefully. Yeah, we need to carry on work.
That's what I meant.
Yeah, fine. So we can find some time in the work programme of this committee and think about timing to when the suitable time for this to come back, so you can make sure that these commitments are being, or concerns have been addressed.
Yeah, that's fine. Thanks. We're going to move on to the next petitioners. If you want to stay, you're welcome. But if you want to leave, it's up to you. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry.
We can continue. The next agenda item is number 6, a request for call-in capital funding bid for the proposed production of car parking charging across selected BCC parks. And we got in attendance Councillor Adrian Delaney and Councillor Bruce Lyons. And we also got Councillor Majid Mahmood, Cabinet Member for Environment, and Darren Che, Assistant Director, Street Scene, Matt Hagini, Partnership Manager, Street Scene and Parks, and Joe Hayden, Head of Parks. To consider this request for call-in, the portfolio holder and the lead officer identified in the report have been summoned to attend, and they are here in the meeting. And the following documents are attached in the report, which I believe everybody would have seen thoroughly. And we got A, call-in procedure briefing note in the pack, and B, executive decision record. C, the relevant form for the request for call-in logged by Councillors Adrian Delaney and Bruce Lyons. And D, the report considered by the Cabinet decision. So I can open up for Councillor Adrian Delaney and Councillor Bruce Lyons the case to the committee.
All right, thank you, Chair. We're obviously opposed to the charge. Parks belong to people, not the council, should remain free. But there are also a number of flaws in the report and the decision-making process that warrant a call-in, even if other committee members agree with the principle of charging. Item 5 on the criteria sheet, the executive appears to overlook some relevant consideration in arriving at its decision. In the full business case, it mentions that Bromsgrove Council, where the car park for the Licky Hills sits, have refused to cooperate with the request to submit an application to the valuation office before the work's complete and charging is implemented. This is because they clearly think that the introduction of charges will change the valuation Birmingham City Council, however, is maintaining that they believe that the car parks will have a nil rating for business rates, even after the work is complete and charges are introduced. One must be wrong, and when you look at guidance and other examples, it does feel like Ron's very valid point. Car parks are eligible for business rates if they are operated for a profit, but wouldn't be if they were free or had charges set at a level just to cover costs. The fact that the whole point of the exercise is supposed to raise money to invest in parks, it must be operating for a profit. Indeed, at Camp Hill, the only parks with charges currently operating, the pay and display car park there has a rateable value of 41,000. This point wasn't really addressed when it was raised at Cabinet, but it is an important one, as the financial business case is predicated on there being no business rates to pay. So if they did find they became liable later, it undermines their figures. The equality impact assessments section of the current report states that initial quality screening has taken place, but these aren't attached. It just says mitigations are in place for age and disability, but doesn't say what these are. Cabinet are obliged to take quality into consideration when making their decisions. Omitting them from the report means they couldn't have done so. If they are the same as previous equality impact assessments, then they'd probably take a narrow view of disability as just those qualifying for Blue Badge, and then say that because Blue Badge parking will remain free, they're meeting this need. However, disability is much wider and will include a range of conditions that people that might put people off attending the park if they couldn't drive, as whilst they may be able to walk the very short distance that is used to assess entitlement to a Blue Badge. There is no way they could walk or use public transport the distance to the park and then use the park itself.
Thanks, Councillor Delaney. Councillor Bruce Lyons.
Thank you, Chairman. Following on from Councillor Delaney, I'll just overview a few of the criteria. Firstly, 6, the decision has already been generated. The decision has already generated particular controversy among those likely to be affected by it, or in the opinion of the overview scrutiny committee, it is likely so to do. Now, we know previously about relying plans to impose charges at Sutton Park some years ago. And the reason this is so deeply unpopular is because so many people enjoy these parks, access to parks, local nature reserves, and other green open spaces. It's vital for both physical and mental health, this which was clearly evident at the COVID lockdown. Not everybody is able to walk long distances or cycle, use public transport, but for them, this is one of the few free activities they can enjoy, and yet this council, in the middle of the cost of living crisis, now wants to take money for them. It's pleasure. The way this item was included on the forward plan suggests they knew it would be controversial, as it made no mention of charges. The title on the forward plan was Capital Bid for the introduction of car parking across selected Birmingham City Council parks. So does not mention charges. At the transport scrutiny, previous transport scrutiny, there was no obstacle. We asked if this should capital bid for the introduction of car parking charges across selected parks. But at that time, the committee was unable to answer the question. The chair of that scrutiny, now Cabinet Member for Transportation, agreed with Councillor Huxtable that there was a big difference between the two. Another area of criteria is that this point also raises the possibility that scrutiny may wish to consider an additional reason for calling criteria number 9. The notification decision does not appear to have been in accordance with the council procedures. The reason we didn't flag this on the report was that we was only made aware of it after it had been submitted. But scrutiny do have the right to consider other reasons for calling not identified in the calling form that are raised in the meeting. Now, a misleading, whether it's deliberate or otherwise, title on the calling plan does seem to fit this criteria. Move on to criteria 7. There is a substantial lack of clarity, material inaccuracy, or insufficient information provided in the report to allow the Overview and Scrutiny Committee to hold the executive to account and/or add value to the work of the council. This really just covers the same for item 5 of law. The executive appears to have overlooked some very relevant consideration, as there is considerable overlap between the two criteria because the equality impact assessment was not included, and because the executive has not, in our view, properly addressed the issue of business rates. The information contained in the report is not sufficient to hold, to be able to hold the executive to account. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Bruce Lyons. Any questions from the members? Yes, Councillor Ward.
Yeah, I haven't had a look at this, and one of the points that have been raised by my colleagues across there regarding consultation. On one hand, it says that this is going to be a consultation, but the other one, it seems to imply that it's an approval capital for capital spending on the equipment to introduce the car parking charges. So is it one or is it the other? If it's a consultation, I'm just thinking about my own ward, my own residents in Sutton Coldfield. In Sutton Coldfield, we've got the largest town council in the country. There is absolutely nothing in here that says that consultation with the town council will take place. There is nothing in here that recognises their existence. Not unusual, because the city council for years refused to acknowledge there was frankly parish council. But obviously there's going to be a huge backlash from the residents of Sutton Coldfield at any move to introduce car parking charges in Sutton Park. Also, not only that, but recently the park benefited from a sizable amount of cash from the government to improve the car parking there. Now the council want to charge for parking in it. That sounds quite good. So I would say that it does not. I'd like some clarification. Is this a consultation, and will that consultation be listened to? Or is the consultation the tick box exercise before putting the machines in? Because that's what this reads like, and I can guarantee the backlash from the residents of Sutton Coldfield and all the other parts will be substantial. And I don't think there's any grounds here, certainly to approve this without it going back and coming back from the executive, that the consultation will be carried out properly, because this doesn't show it.
Lord Bryden.
I think we need some clarification from the officers and cabinet member here, because I'm not clear myself where all of this has got to. My understanding is that an in-principle decision to introduce car parking charges in some parks was made in 2017. Is that right? It was in principle. Isn't it that this report, the recent report to Cabinet, has been about setting aside the capital budget that's needed to put the infrastructure in should this go ahead? Is that what's happened next? And isn't there going to be, as a result of those two reports, now public consultation and then a full business case for each park, in which case some of this may not go ahead if the business case doesn't stack up? So I think we just need some clarification, really, first of all, from the officers and from the cabinet member about where all of this has got to. That would be really helpful, Chair.
Thanks, Councillor Ryder. Can I ask cabinet member and officers to respond?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I'd like to thank the members for the request for the calling and the Chair of the committee for hearing the request for the calling. Full notice and the points that have been raised by members. With your permission, Chair, I'd just like to deal with the issues that have been raised and note the comments around the controversy associated with the proposed introduction of parking charges, particularly at Sutton Park. But there's really no controversy here, Chair, because the Cabinet report, the decision in the Cabinet report that have been recommended, I'll go through the 6 decisions, approves a full business case for capital funding required to facilitate the proposed introduction of car parking charges over a 2-year period, approves the service prudential borrowing of 1.907 million to be paid back over a 10-year term, approves the commencement of consultation to find the each individual scheme business case, notes the capital expenditure which will be incurred on a scheme by scheme basis, and only following the approval of the full business case for each of the schemes. Notes the approval of the individual scheme full business case will be in accordance with county government procedures, and dedicates approval of individual scheme full business cases to the Cabinet members for neighbourhoods and financing resources in consultation with the Strategic Director of City Operations and Director of Council Management. And at Cabinet, the councillors referred to the comment I made around the car park at the back centre and the rateable value. I made it clear there that the reason there's a rateable value for the park is that the car park doesn't just serve the users of the park, also serves people who use the back centre, which is a well-established organisation. The park also serves people who visit Edgbaston for the cricket and all the other local shops and around. That's why there's a rateable value there. We've had a conversation. The Birmingham City Council Business Rates team believes that the valuation office will consider whether there will be any rateable value in the car parks, but as long as the main use is for the benefit of the users of the park, then that shouldn't be the case. Generally, around Lickey Hills Park, that was specifically mentioned, as most of you probably aware, although we own the Lickey Hills Country Park, it's actually within Bromsgrove Council, and we have spoken to them, and there was a request for a rateable value would be requested by Bromsgrove business teams, rates teams. Bromsgrove's team have opted to wait until the proposed parking charge is implemented before submitting a request to valuation office. So that's a decision for Bromsgrove to take, not for the Birmingham City Council to take. In relation to environmental impact assessments, Chair, all of those now included in the report that's come to committee now, and it was a clerical error, I believe, from the committee clerk themselves for not inserting the reports into the original report that came. The 2 technical characteristics that have identified age and ability, we have put mitigations in place for them if the consultation and business case was approved. The parking at Canary Park there for those who are in receipt, who are holders of blue badges. So that's not, that's the mitigation that we would put in for that. In terms of public health, there was a comment made that public health assessments were required, but they're not actually a requirement for cabinet reports and have not been requested at any stage of the governance checks for this particular report. There was also in the request for calling, there was a reference to dropping of proposed parking charges at Sutton Park. That's not actually the case. It's in line with what Councillor Bridle said. There was a report in 2017 for proposal of car parking charges at Canning Park. On the back of that, there was a discussion that took place with an elected member in Sutton with the officers, Joe Hayden, just to have a conversation at a whole forum at Sutton Weasley, and it was quite a demonstrative crowd of residents there. There was no business case. There was no agreement to drop a business case because one had not been formulated. The essence of this report is to allow us to go to consultation, including Sutton Town Council, the elected members, in all of the parks that are affected, residents and service users of the parks as well, because we acknowledge the fact that not everyone who visits Sutton Park lives in Sutton. So those are people that we would want to be speaking to. The resources from that consultation will come from within the resources itself of parks. It's not the capital bid that we put in. We put in, one of the recommendations is to basically just put that money available if the business case is approved when it comes back, myself and the directors. So in line with basically what Councillor Mark Ryder said, that there will be a full public consultation with Sutton Town Council, who we acknowledge will be, one of our partners that we would be working with around Sutton Park, and the full business case will come back. And unless, Kristen tells me otherwise, when the full business case does come forward, there would be another opportunity for any members of the council to request a call-in.
Thank you, Chairman. Remember any? Yeah.
And as part of that business case, obviously you've alluded to a few sort of equalities that you're looking at. Obviously, every parts of the city aren't equal right now. So Sutton Park is a much more affluent area than, say, Woodgate Valley, which is part of my ward, and Quinton is part of Barton Green ward. And actually, we're looking at either setting costs or introducing costs. People can't afford the same rates, so would that be part of considerations?
Not all parks will have the same type of cost attached to them. So when we had the consultation with Canning Park, there was different timings for the actual cost of using the car park based on, because obviously Canning Park, where that's situated, that's also part of Canning Park is within the Borsley ward, which is quite deprived, and other parts is within Edgbast, and then you got Park instead of, but that would form part of the consultation in terms of what the costings would actually involve, because I would imagine that they would be separate in terms of Sutton Park. And again, we need to be able to speak to the people before we can come to that decision where we can, refine the full business case to come back to us to have a look. But as a council, we have a duty to maximise our assets. Everyone does that. Thank you, Chair.
Can I just pick up on what my colleague, Councillor Rainbow, just said? When you get to the point of a business case, will there be some form of economic impact assessment there? Because Lauren's made a very good point that, across Birmingham, in Sutton, it's very different to where it might be in Bartley Green. And actually in Bartley Green, if you can start to obey charges there, actually people might just park on the streets all around the park and actually clog up the roads. So there's a kind of, I don't think there's a one-size-fits-all in all of this, is what I would guess. And could we have a kind of an economic impact assessment which reflects that alongside kind of the business case? So, we're clear about, if there are charges, where they're going to be and when they would be and what that would look like. That makes sense, I think.
Yeah. Cool. Thank you, Chair. That's actually a very good question. And the reason we brought this cabinet put forward is based on having individual business cases. For each park, we'll have a separate business case put forward to myself and the strategic directors, and that will form the basis of charges if charges are introduced, as to how much we're going to introduce, who may be exempt from those charges, who can use different charges different times a day, whether some will be weekends, some may be day. Again, but we need to speak to the people. Without speaking to the people, we can't formulate a business case. This is just a report to give us permission to start the conversation, but if we don't have the conversation, we can't come up with a business case. Thank you, Chair. Also, what did you raise your hand?
Yeah.
Okay.
Will you also consider the effect it will have on the Trafford Centre and the urban farm and the higher football pitches as well?
Again, as I said, everything will be considered. We need to start the consultation. Everything into the business case, which will then come back to myself, Councillor Steve, and people.
So we're right in thinking that the decision to go ahead with any of these parks is probably quite a few years away. Is that right? Just to hear your answer on that. And just my other point would be, saying to my colleagues at Oakley, during lockdown, myself and the other half visited Chiscope Reservoir and took a picture of the car parking meter there, because it had a very useful message on it, which explained why you were paying a charge and that the charge would be recycled back into the improvement of that particular area, that natural area around the reservoir. So, I mean, if any of this does go ahead at any stage, then I would like that to be considered, because I think people would be more inclined to think that maybe this was a good idea if it was explained it's going to be recycled into the improvement of their park. I think that's a really, really important point. But I mean, there's lots of things, you know, I was in Sutton Park actually on the weekend and there were thousands and thousands of cars there because there was a massive national cross-country event. How the heck you would introduce car parking charges in that situation, I don't know. But anyway, no doubt these are all the things that will be looked into.
Yeah, I just picked up on Councillor Bryle's point about Shostoke Reservoir. I know where that is very well, and if we want to go and see a place where it works very well, that might be somewhere to go and have a look and see what's going on, because the clear signs there and everything. It's a very nice place to go and have a walk as well.
Yes.
Just a point on the consultation. I mean, you tried to implement these charges a couple of years ago. Did you not carry out consultation then? Didn't you find that it was, and that's one of the reasons why you failed to implement them and the decision was implemented. With regard to the business rates and the car parks, in particular at the Lickey Hills car park, wouldn't it be good if you could have some kind of discussion with Bromsgrove District Council about the rates and putting forward something to the valuation office, so you can actually find out if you are going to be subject to business rates. Because obviously, if you are, that's going to undermine the full business case. And then you haven't answered the question on the quality impact assessment and how it impacts on a lot of people who aren't entitled to blue badges, but actually do have difficulty in walking long distances. And obviously, the Lickey Hills is the number 20 probably gets you so far, but we have to walk the Rose Hill to access most of the park, and that's a hell of a, for anybody that's ever walked up Rose Hill, it's pretty difficult to do that. And then, as you say, you've got some kind of walking difficulty, probably or something, and then to walk around the park, that's going to put you off using the Lickey Hills, which I think that's not something we want to do. We want to encourage people to access our parks, especially in light of the Commonwealth Games. We want people to take more exercise because of all the benefits that flow from it. So I still think that we should be pulling this back in.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yeah, I can respond. Just to clarify to members of the committee, no formal consultation has taken place around Sutton Park previously. So I think the council, the elected members, correct in that assertion that we have. In terms of Bromsgrove Council, we've had the conversation with them, and as I said earlier, they want to wait to see if the business case is approved before they have that discussion with the valuations office agency around the business rates. And it was a business rates, they were the ones who would benefit from them. So, and the third point was around the quality impact assessment. They're now included in the report here, and they're rolling it out because of a clerical error, not from our side, but from the committee clerk, and we would be, the age and disability has come into, has been one of the two protected characteristics that come out. As we said, Canning Park, we do have, if you hold blue badge, then the same scheme would be adopted there. But again, we'll have the consultation with the various stakeholders, age concern, etc. We can speak and see if there could be any exemptions or discounts available if the business case is approved. We're still at early stages. And just to clarify the point Councillor Bridle raised about recycling the funds in terms of any income that is received. I can give you Canning Park as a case, an example. 2017, we introduced car parking charges in Canning Park. 50% of the income from there, once costs have been deducted, go to the Mac Centre, which is based in Canning Park. And that takes with the need for the City Council to award grants to the Mac Centre, which is what we used to do before the introduction of the car parking. Secondly, we managed to improve the car parks in Canning Park using the income received. The security, there's new lighting in the car parks, so it's generally safer for service users of the car park. And that would be the aspiration that we would have again for these parks. So try to recycle much of the income that is received once we've offset the cost into making the parks better, which also then means that all parks across the city would benefit from the city of nature, and that's going forward. James. Yes,
thank you, Chairman. With regard to the quality impact assessment, okay, we're an error as though not included, but obviously strengthens the point that procedures, proper procedures, were not followed wherever. Just a couple of points if I The proposed going live of charges at this year's party for spring of next year, which gives very little time for any meaningful consultation or thoughts. But with regard to the assessment and consultation, that will obviously be done very quickly, will a case assessment be made on parking displacement? As happens in other places, people don't want to pay that price of park. And obviously that's not having an effect on business and properties in the locality. If you are going to do that, how do you do that? It's going to be very hard to measure in the first instance.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. In relation to quality impact assessments, they will be produced against each individual business case that comes back to ourselves. In terms of parking displacement, in the original cabinet report, there's a number of paragraphs on how we will deal with the displacement. Local engineer will be in speaking to residents and ensuring that there is parking for those people that live near and to the park. Thanks.
Nobody's got any question? I've got a question to ask, about the charges. It says for a whole day is £3.30, and then for 4 hours, £2.20, and then for 1 hour is 50p. And there's no charges mentioned about if they want to park it for 2 hours or 3 hours.
In fact, that's what Canada Park. As I've said earlier, we're going to have a separate charge which is based on the consultation with the service users of the parks and the stakeholders. Like, for example, certain parks such as town council will be key. There will be discussions around the new proposed charge if the business cases.
And you say, most of the money will be invested within those parks, for instance, say in fencing and other amenities to make them better. Yeah.
That's the aspiration. As the council, we have a duty to maximise all of our assets. Perhaps we wouldn't be in a situation where we would have better settlement the scrutiny, so I won't go into it.
What's the time scale on this? I mean,
Again, it's down to the consultation. There may be different time scales for different parks because certain may take considerable longer than Lick Hills, but with the issue around Bromswell Council, Lick Hills may take slightly longer than the others, but it all depends. We're going to try to have, we're going to have a meaningful consultation with all stakeholders, all of the 5 selected parks.
So, Chair, most as well, the papers were submitted in June, there has been some slippage as a result of the timetable. I would say probably 4 months out. We have completed an informal consultation already into the project. We'll see if we need to do that again, given the time that's gone by. But we're fully committed to a formal informal and formal consultation for each project. Some will be different, it will be at least 8 weeks. Rectory might be 6 to 8 weeks. And the question, to answer the point back, Romans Road, we have contacted them several times on these checkpoints. We've sought, they've refused to answer our request to its evaluation offering. However, 2 out of the 3 car parks would be considered free based on the information we've received from the valuation office agency and the Birmingham Business Rates team. 1 car park would be rentable. We've asked the VOA to give some ballpark.
Which car park is that?
That would be on Rose Hill, it says the legal golf course and the Rose Hill Camp Park. And we believe all this information unfortunately came after the paper was submitted, so we believe if that car park will be chargeable. At the moment, we don't know, we can't determine the amount, but we're trying to get that to be that we visit.
You say you're carrying out the consultation formally or
informal only,
so informal. I think local council group of record that the board has permitted it on the closest board to I didn't know.
This is 2018.
On the board council then,
well, like I said, we'll go back and
we'll refresh this. I kind of remember this might have been consulted over there.
Councillor Ward.
Thanks, Chair. Can I make ask a general question? Is it the intention of parks to encourage people to use the parks more, or more people to use the parks, or just make money out of the motorists? Because if I look at the breakdowns of the costs that are here, the cost of putting in the machines, etc., there are highways fees in there for implementing, putting in highways, lining and signage. Okay, that's probably to stop people parking in the streets nearby instead of paying the parking charges. So effectively, what you're doing are running around, chasing people away from the parks. That's all you're doing. I would suggest that a far better way of doing things is attract a lot more people to parks and find something in the parks to make them spend their money, rather than try and chase them away.
Again, the consultation with service users and stakeholders, and then once the business case has been approved, any decisions made. We do have the future product survey of nature, so we've got environmental justice, where we are going to be upgrading a number of parks in a number of wards across the city. There's a plan to upgrade the parks in 6 wards in the city within the next 4 years. For council, we approved the document in February. So no, we are encouraging people to come to the parks, but you also need to remember that car parks were never introduced in parks. When the parks, these parks especially, unless an officer tells me something different, I don't believe a car park was initially installed in any of the parks from the outset. So parks are there so people have walking distance, get to parks. And again, there's other methods of transport as well that people can use, but all this will come into the consultation that we will be taking, a meaningful consultation. I can commit here to the members of the committee. There will be a meaningful consultation with service users, elected members as well, so that they can look into the decision, and then we'll take it from there once we have a business case. In terms of timeline, it will vary in the department, because the Hills has sort of said they need to have a discussion from the council as well, because they have interest. Certainly there will be some town council, elected members, need to be some friends of parks groups as well, who will be speaking to everyone for the business case, and come back to myself, Councillor Mosquito and the strategic directors to take a decision on there. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Chair. Can I seek advice, because we had a good discussion from the members and from the councillors who call in that CM, responsible officers. If it is within the remit of the committee, that we wait until the consultation results are out, and then the business case, more thorough business case, and then we get a brief report, and then we can take it from there. Is that, yeah, Councillor Brad.
We make this, we have our discussion with everybody here, do we, about how we do this?
Well, I think
We have to leave.
Absolutely, there's 2 things here before you move on. I think the point with the chair is that obviously the business case is going to be developed, and as part of that there'll be further information, which again will be subject to pre-decision scrutiny or calling like today. Decisions that may have in the future. So this committee before we start to make a decision, as also returns back to the cabinet early this month. It can decide to do that, or it can decide to not give any decision, including that the decision will be implemented immediately. There is a third option, which is kind of not in between, but you can still make some comments, bearing in mind that if you are to not make a decision, or not to refer the decision back, any comments obviously can't be contrary to the decision that's been made. So the 2 short decisions before the committee this afternoon are the decision that was made on the 6th of September. Do you want to refer to the call of the cabinet, or are you happy with the answers that have been provided, and therefore no further action on this particular decision? That's not to mean that you can't take further action or scrutiny to later date.
On page 33, it says that we can not call the decision in, not call this in, but that we can agree to inform the cabinet member of any concerns that we have by letter. I propose that that's what we should do, possibly. That we should inform, we should put in writing the concerns that have been raised here, I particularly like the Shustoke Reservoir thing to be put in writing. With anybody else, so that would be my suggestion.
Yeah. Okay. Those from other members?
I mean, broadly, I would agree with Councillor Bride that we put it in writing, but the fact that this is now still only kind of at a stage of it's going to go to consultation.
Yeah, that's it.
There's no formal decisions to be made. I think it should be put in writing, but I also think we should just get on with it as well. So actually it can come back to scrutiny when it needs to, and it can be called back in as well, because at the moment, I can't see at the moment where what we do next. Otherwise, there needs to be a kind of a what next to kind of call in and do. So my view is yes, let's put it in writing, because I think the point about Shustoke Reservoir is really good.
Yeah.
But actually, let's get on and kind of do the kind of consultation work so that it can be kind of scrutinised a bit more further down the road.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That'd be great.
Yeah.
Both of them.
A letter with that idea. Letter with the idea plus. Yeah.
I guess ultimately that there might be differences of opinion, so you may want to possibly move that formally, Chair, and just make sure that you've got not consensus, but the numbers to move that forward.
Yeah, can I propose the idea put forward by Councillor Bridle and followed by Councillor Goodwin? All those in favour? Yeah. Oh, that's a little
Then he's got to call it in, just have a look.
But there will be an estimate then.
Next item, you want to stay, you can. If you want to go,
Really would love to, but
thanks very much.
another appointment. Thank you, thank you.
Let's say that for the officer. Yeah.
Rather than me individually writing, Laura.
Oh, yeah, no, we shouldn't do that. It has to come from the committee, really.
Yeah.
So maybe you could draft something based on concerns.
Yeah, add our concerns
And
in
then,
there.
show us it, and then we all.
And
say
then we
yes.
can take it from there.
Yeah,
That'd be good.
yeah, agreed.
On this. It only calms it down for an hour or two, getting that irritation there.
You've got a suggestion or point to.
Can we start on to the next item?
Chair, just before you start, the letter, just had a chat amongst ourselves. We'd be writing a collective letter from myself.
The committee.
Yeah.
No, it will be a collective, from the committee.
Rather than individually, we could raise our concerns.
No. Councillor Idris would write as chair on behalf of the whole committee.
Yeah.
Okay.
Will we see that before it goes out?
Yeah.
Okay. I think that was the point, wasn't it?
That's good.
Thanks very much. The next item is on delays in birth and death registrations. And to receive an update on the council resolution of 14th June 2022 relating to delays in the release of deceased for burial and in the registration process of birth and death. And we've got Sajila Nasir, Director of Regulation and Enforcement. Paul Lancaster, who I believe has left the council. Over to you, Sajila.
Chair. Thank you. I'm here to give an update in relation to the council resolution on bereavement services. I'll take the report as read, but pull out a few key points as we go through and any developments that haven't been included within the report that have happened since it was written. So obviously we've got positive news around the cemeteries in terms of extending both Kings Norton and Quinton cemeteries. And just to add to that now that the Muslim section of Quinton Cemetery opened today. And it will take short notice burials depending upon resources, etc., the normal ways that the cemeteries work. So that's a positive piece of news. Obviously, we move forward with our development of child burials and rehearthing Sutton Coldfield crematoria and the rebuilding of Yardley. We have invested in new ICT systems in terms of our telephony systems at the cemeteries. That's now up and running. And from that, we'll be able to, make our services more efficient because people will be just manning the phones as opposed to trying to do 10 different tasks on a rota system. But we'll also see where we have the greatest demand in those telephone calls. And we'll be able to then look at our operating model based upon the information that we receive from there. We have also, and it's not mentioned in the report, for this winter we'll be commencing evening burials at Sutton Coldfield, Sutton Newhall Cemetery. So normally during the winter the last burial is at 2:30 p.m. and we will be continuing up to the last burial being at 6 p.m. at Sutton Newhall. So we're really positive about that information. We continue.
What about summertime? What would be the time of summertime?
It's more about when dusk is. So it's as dusk falls, our operating method. We haven't got a clear date. It's we move as dusk moves, and we have to take into consideration health and safety matters. So we continue our work with our faith communities, working on the Memorandum of Understanding. The new customer charter, we're working with the portfolio holder in terms of when that launch should be, the formal launch and the comms plan. And we're hopeful that will be shortly, hopefully in October. But we continue to work on that. That has been finalised, so it's just a case of the actual formal launch of it. In terms of work with the coroner, as you know, the coroner is an independent judicial body. We have positive news about filling vacancies that we've had at the coroner's service, and we hope that staffing to be in place by mid-November. That is positive, and it also looks at one extra member of staff to help the coroner with their administrative processes. Similarly, we are working and meeting with the coroner to look at some benchmarking the coroner is doing between the service that we have here at Birmingham and Solihull, but also for similar sized coronial services within the UK, to just check that we've got that balance of staffing right to assist her with all of the vast amount of work that she has to do. We have met with the West Midlands Guild of Funeral Directors, as stated here. Their concerns are similar to those raised by the motion itself in looking at making sure that we have an efficient registration service so that they can continue with the processes that they have in place for embalming and other preparation that they need for the bodies. So we've picked that up, and we will be reinstating the funeral directors meetings that we used to have pre-COVID for all funeral directors between our services and them as representatives. As we continue, the report refers to, we had an initial meeting with the Muslim Bereavement Steering Group back in August. We've met with them again in September to work on terms of reference and key work programme items such as evening burials, the terms of the Friends of Hanswell Park or Friends of Cemeteries, etc. So we have set up a work programme to work with them on. Other points of interest for them and for all communities within Birmingham is the CTPM scanner. We have extended the contract for the CTPM scanner for another year till the 1st of October 2023, and we hope that will benefit all. And we are looking at the moment, as referred to in this document, for a new home for the mortuary, and we will put a project plan around that and an assessment of any available sites, as it refers to in the document. We think that we have identified one that may be a possibility. In terms of registration services, I'm pleased to say that 90% of those deaths that can be registered have all got appointments right at this moment in time in the coming weeks. That doesn't necessarily mean that we've met the KPI for registering deaths, but that is deaths aren't taken. Let me clarify this because it's in the report. Deaths aren't taken in date order. They're taken in the order in which we receive the documentation that is required to register the death. So it could be that someone's died, they've filled in a pre-registration form, but we are still awaiting the documentation to do the actual registration. So it's a very complex issue between when something happens, getting something called the MCCD, which is the medical certificate of the cause of death from the hospital or from the GP, and then sending the link out to the family member for them to actually make the appointment. So it's a combination of that and having diary space to make the appointment in. So we are working very hard to make that an efficient and seamless process for everybody, and we're going in the right direction. We have had obstacles in the way of vacancies and filling vacancies. We are recruiting as quickly as we can, and a positive piece of news is that we will be recruiting to a new post of Head of Bereavement and Registration Services, and one of their first roles will be to have a look at the complete operating model of the bereavement and registration services so that we focus our resources on where it's necessary so that we can make an efficient and effective and caring service for all of our communities within Birmingham. Thank you, Chair.
Any questions? Yes, Councillor Harmer.
Yeah, can I ask about birth registration? When my daughter was born earlier this year, I booked an appointment straight away, and I actually managed to get an appointment over 10 weeks after she was born to get her registered. Interestingly, there's been a lot of publicity about the delays in getting hold of passports, but in fact the passport office took less than half that time to convert when I finally had the birth documentation to convert that into a passport. Now, the importance of this, given the cost of living crisis, is you cannot claim child benefit until you've got your birth certificate. I was in this room on Friday with a discussion about the cost of living crisis, and one of the points that was made that one of the things the council can do is to ensure that our citizens are able to claim their benefits as efficiently and as quickly as possible. So in order to do that, one of the ways we should be looking to do that is to eliminate that backlog. And therefore, in the light of all those comments, could we have an update and a view as to when we're going to get back to sort of pre-COVID levels of registering births and allowing people to claim the child benefit to which they are entitled?
Thank you, Councillor Harmer. Yeah, I agree with you that, we need to do better in this area. A lot of our problems exacerbated by vacancies, and registration services is not something that you can take anybody. You have to be a qualified registrar. We have to train you into that position because obviously it's such a significant role that you can't make a mistake. There can't be any mistakes on a birth certificate or death registration or a magic marriage certificate. So it is a very time-consuming position to fill and to train to. That aside, we are trying our best to recruit the vacancies that we have. And we're also looking at, again, telephony, which we've used in bereavement, to see if we can increase efficiency, because a lot of our delays are, for instance, used up by people not coming to appointments. And obviously it's too late if they don't turn up to an appointment to fill that appointment. And that means that we've got wasted slots that we could have allocated to other people. So we are looking at how we can put into a system where we have some text messaging system to remind people to turn up to the appointments they've made, etc., etc. So part of the role of this new head of service will be to look at those operating models and say, where can we make these improvements? What we're doing at the moment is we're shifting between birth and death registrations because the same staff can do most, to sort of try and keep balancing the backlogs that we have. I know that isn't an ideal answer, but that's what we're doing at the moment until the point at which we can recruit enough staff to fill the vacancies to hopefully tackle the delays in both service areas.
Just come back one specific point to that. In terms of efficiency and people missing appointments, what a lot of other local authorities do is actually have birth registration in the maternity hospitals. A resident of mine who just moved to Birmingham from Rugby said that when my previous children were born, they were registered there and then in the hospital. Clearly in Birmingham, we have a number of hospitals where children are born, but by far the biggest is the women's. And could we maybe trial at that hospital doing that? Because of course, you know, you're not going to miss registering the birth when you're physically there. And clearly that could create some extra efficiency around, you know, cutting down on those missed appointments. It's at least worth a trial to see if it works out, and then maybe if it does, you roll it out to some of the other hospitals where
We did look at the feasibility of this a few years ago, and we found that it wasn't going to be an efficient system within Birmingham. And this is because of the dual role of the staff. So, as I said, we shift them in between peaks and troughs that we have within the city. If, for instance, you took one staff member out and put them permanently in the hospital, they were sick or they were on leave, then you would have to take another staff member out of your reservoir of staff, if you like, and move them there. That ability and that flexibility is completely lost when you start putting single staff members within any particular work area. And that's because you spread them too thinly to manage anything that you have coming in. So we have looked at it in the past, and I'm happy to go away and put together a more comprehensive briefing as to why we don't think it would be a feasible solution. And it's not that we don't want to look at it, we have looked at it, and it wasn't, we weren't able to show enough benefits for that model of working. But when we go to, as I said, we're bringing the head of service in specifically to look at those operating models. What operating models can we have to maximise efficiency?
Right, you highlighted previously that there's a problem with people not turning up at the registry office because they're missing appointments. They're not going to miss an appointment when they're in the hospital. So it may be there are some inefficiencies as you've described, but there may also be efficiencies that maybe weren't obvious when you looked at that before.
I think through you, chairs, we need to take it in the totality, because our services are not separate. We don't have a separate birth registration service. It's a number of staff that just work on birth registrations and a number of staff that just work on death. Everyone is interchangeable, and that's where we get the benefits from that flexibility within the workforce. And once we start separating them out into distinct boxes, we have concerns that, you know, actually won't be as effective as we think. But that's why we're putting everything on the table to look at it into a new operating model.
Thanks. You know, this extension to the hours, very hours, is it in work now, or is it going to be?
It was launched today.
Yeah.
Today was the first day.
That's very welcome. It's very useful, you know, for us and the residents.
Sorry, apologies. Quinton.
Yes, Quinton.
Quinton is now available for short notice burials.
Sutton, because that's where most of the burials happen.
Yeah, if it's still summertime, we're already working till 6. So, you know, that flexibility.
Because a lot of people use that, and that will be very, very helpful.
Yeah, so we're already working till 6 at the moment, Chair, but as the winter months come, we won't stop. We will continue to work till 6, whereas normally we stop at 2:30.
Secondly, I would suggest, you know, when we come back, maybe in 4 months, 6 months on this topic, it will be useful to invite somebody from the coroner's office and somebody from the local hospitals so that they can explain us as elected members what are the difficulties they face from the residents. For instance, some of the residents will ring me and a few of the others, and then when we ring all of us to the coroner office, I can understand. They get irritated, and I would be getting irritated because if they're getting unnecessary calls. So to work in collaboration to avoid that, they can hear from us, what on a daily basis we face, and then we can hear from them how we can help them. Because a lot of times what we hear from the coroner's offices that the hospitals sometimes, or most of the time, refer cases where there's no need for them to refer to the coroner. But to get the burden off their back, they just refer it to the coroner office and they just want to move on. So, it will be useful if somebody from the hospitals and the coroner office are here with the committee and we can thrash ideas and how we can work together. I think that will be very, very useful.
Certainly take that away and see whether
You could have done the next meeting, that would be great.
Yeah, we can obviously have our own staff, but it'll be for the coroner to decide whether she wants to send
a representative. We just want to hear from them, and they need to know because the coroner, senior coroner, don't have to be here. I think that will be useful. Anybody else?
Through you, Chair, if I could just clarify as well that staff from the registration offices have been out now to GPs and hospitals talking through with them what needs to be on the MCCD form, that's the medical certificate of cause of death, and given them a template of the information that they need to put on, because that was one of the areas
that's
where we
useful, I think, because a lot of times, the GPs make mistakes and errors, and the family ends up suffering.
Exactly, and that we have seen that actually now start to work through, and we are getting a better quality of information through and documentation. So we think that reaching out to them has been effective there. Thank you.
Move on to the next item.
Sorry, can I just speak? I think there was a definite request to come back in about 6 months' time.
Yeah, if possible for the 6 months.
Is that right? So we'll make sure that's added to that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Move on to the next one, which is work program. Yes, Councillor Brown.
Can I propose, hopefully people will agree to this, that our clean streets work, the plan is this year, the programme, to start in November. I think that it's no good having the last Cleaner Streets meeting in March, because we'll have missed any chance to influence the budget for the council. So I would suggest that what we do is we have a session in November, a session in December, and we finish in January, so that we can then influence the budget if we need to.
Yeah,
if that's all right with everybody, if you all agree. I think we need to just.
Not a full report, we'll have a brief session, yeah.
Great. And bring it forward from March, not have it in March.
Thank you. Next item is date of the next meeting, which is 13th of October. Same here? Notify.
I need to check the room, but it's back to a Thursday.
But it will be at 2 o'clock on Thursday.
It will be, yeah.
Yeah, is that agreed? Request for call-in, stroke councillor, call for action, or petitions received. I'm not aware of any.
No.
Thank you. Any other urgent business? No, thank you. When we have authority to act between the chair and the officers, if there is anything urgent happening in between the meetings, agreed? Thanks very much. Yeah.